Hello, my name is Jerry Schramm, and I'm doing a presentation on Company B in our annual presentation for this year. So an overview of Company B. Our product, we move chocolate Easter bunnies. We receive, we store, we ship the chocolate Easter bunnies to clients throughout the area. Our annual throughput goal is 8,424,000 cases, and our actual throughput is 9,346,752 cases. We have an average revenue gain from those additional cases over our throughput goal of $1,836,276, and that recouped an annual revenue of $4,462,706 from the cases that we had through our throughput. Our annual labor workforce, 579,377 employees over the course of the year in all of our warehouses week to week. The reason we budget for those employees is week to week those averages change between full-time and part-time employees as the production year changes. When we have a higher throughput during peak season, those employees will increase and decrease subsequently. Our average labor costs, $8,269,360. The importance of that is that the labor cost is 46% higher than the revenue recouped. So it's important to understand that we're paying more for labor than what we're recouping from our revenue sales of the Carrot Patch Pete Chocolate Bunny. Our damage, we see an annual cost from lost revenue of $20,208 from damaged cases through our throughput. Annual case throughput by warehouse. So we have 3 warehouses in Company B, and this demonstrates the throughput of each of those warehouses. I'd like to call attention to Warehouse 3. It has our lowest production, our lowest throughput. It is uncertain whether that warehouse has additional capacity or the difference in capabilities between that warehouse and Warehouse 1 and Warehouse 2 that requires further analysis, but it is our lowest throughput of our 3 warehouses. So maximizing throughput and capacity, we're exceeding our annual throughput goal by 922,752 cases between the 3 warehouses. And that production breakdown, Warehouse 1 is, they're responsible for 33% of our throughput, Warehouse 2, 50% of that throughput, and Warehouse 3, 17%. And I encourage everyone to remember that the difference in that throughput noted on the previous slide is certainly worthwhile of evaluating further. So we look at our opportunity to reduce costs and maximize the capacity. I do think that it's important that as we evaluate this year's presentation, that we look at the warehouse operating capacity of each, and especially Warehouse 3. Are there equipment upgrades, automation opportunities? I think that's an important consideration. And can the resources be further consolidated, perhaps a Warehouse 3 consolidating into Warehouse 1? So our labor totals align with the throughput. So our labor is marrying up well with the throughput. So as our throughput increases and decreases, our labor coincides well. I attribute that to our HR department and our production leadership to make sure that we have the appropriate employee workforce for the throughput. And of course, I selected Q2 because these are chocolate Easter bunnies, and that would subsequently fall in line with the seasonal increase. So we compare our labor cost to our throughput revenue, and you can clearly see by this graph what our retail cost or our revenue is from the throughput compared to our labor cost, and it certainly is upside down by almost half, as I mentioned earlier, 46%. So it's certainly an important topic that we need to consider as an organization. So these labor costs are unsustainable. The workforce staffing meeting production demands, that's true. But it's certainly, as you have a 46% higher labor cost compared to revenue, that does not equal financial longevity for the organization. Cost savings are integral to our survivability. Evaluating the part-time and full-time worker productivity and the cost, the workforce reduction from warehouse consolidation, replacing pallet jacks with fork trucks, as we see in this background photo of 2 workers moving a pallet jack compared to what a fork truck could do, requires half of the workforce, and conduct an efficiency analysis. Are we efficient in our operations? Are we producing enough, moving enough cases per worker, or is there room for efficiency improvement? Cost savings through damage reduction. So the avenue revenue, again, $4,462,706, and the lost revenue from damage is $20,208, and that's in the retail cost of each of these cases. As we can see in this photo, one pallet tipped over is responsible for quite a bit of lost revenue as it stands. Some direct and indirect costs that don't incorporate into that lost sale revenue from those cases. Lost productivity. It's going to, certainly we can't move any other cases until we move that pallet that has damaged cases. Cost for cleanup, removal of the damaged cases, work injury risk, cost of an injury. If someone had been loading or unloading that with a pallet jack that tipped over cases, certainly could have injured the secondary worker that's stabilizing that, and certainly failure to meet customer expectations. Each of these lost pallets is a product for the customer that they're expecting. I think it's important to also conduct a root cause analysis, evaluation of the full-time, part-time worker impact on this damage, and an assessment on the case throughput to the damage. So this here shows the data of the full-time and part-time worker. As we look at the annual comparison, it's pretty clear to see through the graph that case damage is more likely with part-time workers than it's going to be to the full-time workers. And then we look again at the seasonal pitches, and that's why Q2 is selected. Warehouse 1 at the top, Warehouse 3 at the bottom, and of course Warehouse 2 in the middle. And we can see that there's some correlation. It's not consistent as far as the number of part-time workers per week compared to the damage, but we do know that the damage is more likely on the part-time workers, and we can try and extrapolate some sort of relevance here from this graph to try and determine where there's room for improvement. And we look at our case damage to throughput. Again, there's some limited correlation here. It's not consistent, but there's value in looking and seeing that from a hypothetical perspective, moving more cases is likely going to increase the number of damaged cases just on pure volume. As we move more, the chance of cutting corners or taxation of the labor could certainly go ahead and cause more damage. We look at the recommendations, so I think it's important that when we look at this, we're exceeding our goals annually. Production goals should be evaluated and adjusted appropriately. The current cost of labor is unsustainable. Analysis of the Warehouse 3 consolidation. Could we decrease the labor cost without limiting our production or losing any production? I think that's something to analyze. Purchase use of additional fork trucks. Reduce physical manpower needs. If we increase our fork trucks, that's able to move more pallets quicker and with potentially less damage. So I think that's important, and obviously one fork truck requires one person compared to two moving a pallet jack. An evaluation of full-time to part-time workforce. Could the full-time workers operate the equipment that requires more training, and just some supplemental part-time workers to do physical manpower movement. Reduction in case damage losses. Although this is less than 1% impact on our revenue, there's still some benefit to reducing case damage, and some of that is on lost production, work injury, inability to meet orders, and we've addressed that earlier. Reduce damage by limiting part-time workers, increase part-time training, more oversight. If we move towards using fork trucks and having the full-time workers utilize the equipment, I think this minimizes the part-time impact and likely would decrease the damage. And conduct a root cause analysis to understand why it's occurring. Is it laziness? Is it cost cutting? I think that's important to evaluate. I thank you for tuning in for this presentation. Hopefully I was able to convey the message and appropriately portray the data so that we can understand where there's room for improvement, where our revenue and our costs are for this year. So I appreciate the time, and thank you for watching.